Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the jury.
Hey, how is everybody tonight? We are
Ben,
fine. So, welcome. This is the Bunny Rabbit's Hole. I am, of course, Jason, and this is
I am, of course, Craig.
all right.
Our first names are both, of course, in case you didn't notice.
Yes, and we have some odd last names for some people, unless you're like Daniel Craig or
Right?
Jennifer
Yeah, there.
Lee. I don't know. I can't come up with anybody with the last name of Jason. So, damn it, brain isn't firing quick enough.
Right. So today we are going to talk about the Mandela Effect. And Jason, would you like to tell people what the Mandela Effect is?
All right. The Mandela Effect is a collection of consciousness that recollect an event opposite from its reality.
Yeah.
In other terms, it is what's considered a confabulation, and it's a disturbance of memory. So it's where everybody believes that a certain, or not everybody, a large segment of the population believes that an event happened one way, but in reality, it happened another way. So it's just
Right.
like a group consciousness thing where there's tons of events and products and stuff that people don't necessarily remember exactly the way that they happened, said, look, appear,
Right.
taste.
And a prime example of the Mandela Effect, and because it's also named after him, is Nelson Mandela. Now, I myself remember this like it's just a regular memory, but for me, I could have sworn Nelson Mandela died in the 80s,
See,
and many other people do too.
I'm with you because I was in high school at this time. It was like 89, 90, 88, 89, something like that, maybe even 90. I had this class called Current Events, and I swear up and down that we talked about Nelson Mandela in that class. But more importantly, I wasn't 100% positive at that age, everything to know about Nelson Mandela, but there was no real reason to talk about him at that time because he was still in prison. But
Right.
now, looking back at it, I believe that the reason that we talked about it was the fact that he did die.
Right. And I mean, it makes sense. He was doing extended hunger strike, so his health wasn't good. So, I could have swore seeing a news report talking about, the death of Nelson Mandela. And it turns out that Nelson Mandela actually died in 2013.
Yeah, he pretty much just died of old age.
Right. I mean, he got out of prison. He became the president or premier of Africa and, died in 2013 of old age.
Yeah, and there were movies made about him. There's concerts about it, for him. And people, after he did die in 2013, there was a big thing where you could buy T-shirts, and celebrities were wearing them to show respect. And not even celebrities, but a lot of people were wearing shirts that had his prison number on it.
Right. And, not to take away from Nelson Mandela, because he was an incredible human being, but, it was
Nobel Peace Prize winner.
right.
But he did all this after his death.
Right. And yeah, it's amazing. But you mentioned confabulation, and, according to the Psychiatric Journal, psychiatrists coined this term confabulation, and it's the unconscious process of creating a narrative that the narrator believes is true, but that is demonstrably false.
Right.
That would be the definition of that. And, the Mandela Effect, there are so many theories that, some people believe our brain that are like, basically like we're in the Matrix, that our brains are computers, and the Mandela Effect is just like a software glitch.
Right. Right. To go along with that, there's a lot of it goes along with the group mind, where one person can influence more people into actually not believing what they really understand is to be true. This happens a lot in cults. So they'll start that David Koresh and Charles Manson were, and there was a bunch of others. They're really good at preying on people to to challenge their own thoughts and their own beliefs. Right. And when you stop having, what strong viewpoints on stuff, or actually being, confident enough in your own brain, you start second guessing things.
Right.
But they're not all as violent or as, as devious as that.
Well, this is funny because my wife and I were actually talking about something like this today, because I believe that, that whole cult thing mentality, we see it today in our government. We see it in the Trump supporters. I saw a picture of two guys wearing T-shirts that says, "I'd rather be Russian than Democrat."
Yeah.
What the fuck? Go. I don't care. But still, it's like, that group mind or mass hallucinations,
right.
Where all of a sudden it's okay to be racist. It's okay to, but, anyways, that's a completely different rabbit hole. But there are also.
But you're bringing up a valid point there, that it's, because they're collectively coming together, that they're so they believe in this stuff now because that's the narrative. They've created this false narrative, and now the more that it gets hit onto them, the more it becomes real. The more it becomes exactly how life is.
Right.
And it even goes a little bit farther than that too. It doesn't have to necessarily be like a Trump supporter or somebody in political. It could be as something as small as we're the Cub Scouts. They may be grooming little Nazi children to go off and they're not. I'm just kidding. But I'm making fun of their uniforms because they look like jackbooted thugs, even though they're like 3 foot tall.
Right.
But they collectively groom these kids to act a certain way. Now, whether or not, I'm not saying what they do is bad, because they're I do have a point, and I will get to it here in a second. So they have this group, and they've all indoctrinated their beliefs. Well, all of a sudden, one of the kids' sisters wanted to go on the camping trip with them. Well, it's Boy Scouts. You have a Girl Scouts. You get to go do that one. But what it did was it actually, the group mind got bigger and said, well, why can't a girl join the Boy Scouts? Because they have the Girl Scouts. Now, when a boy can't, or a girl can join wrestling in high school because there's not girls wrestling. But, so I'm getting off on a little bit here, but what I'm saying is group mind gotten people to believe that this little girl should be able to be in the Boy Scouts, even though there is Girl Scouts and they're doing their own thing, but her brother can't join the Girl Scouts because they went, no, fuck him, he's got a penis.
Right. Okay. So there's, other explanations for this. People talk about parallel universes. People talk about virtual realities, alternate timelines, time travel, black holes, wormholes. These are all different possibilities that people have come up with of why this stuff is happening. I've watched a lot of videos on this over the last couple of days. I've read a lot of stuff about it. I watched a video from this crackpot Wendy Mitchell, who she talked about. There's actually somebody, Fiona Broom coined the term the Mandela Effect in 2010. Okay. But there was actually somebody else named Cynthia Sue Larson who was talking about this stuff. She called them like parallel shifts and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And, quantum dynamics and stuff like this. And she would go into this. And, according to this crackpot Wendy Mitchell, because she didn't understand it, it's all witchcraft. Because, that's how religious zealots are. If you can't understand it, Satan did it.
Right. Well, exactly. That's just like what Chris Rock said. It's like, how do you get a population to stop doing something that's bad for them, like eating pork when it goes bad? Tell them the Bible said not to do it.
Right.
Bible.
But she was just going off.
Chris Rock impersonation. I'm sorry.
She was just going off on this stuff. It's the devil. And I actually ran across a bunch of them going, stay away from the Mandela Effect. It's the devil's work. I'm like, That has nothing to do with the Mandela Effect. This is something about memories.
Right. It's so. All right. One I wanted to talk about is you mentioned the time travel thing.
Right.
Okay. So I want to touch on that really, really quick because really, okay. So one way that they say that the Mandela effect happens is somebody jumps through time, fucks with something. It's like everybody knows what the butterfly effect is. You step on a butterfly and then it changes the course of human history afterwards. Well, when this happens is not everybody is affected. So it's simple little things that are affected when somebody goes back in time and spends $1 that's not from their time period, smacks somebody that they're not supposed to, gets into a car crash. So, it can be even more insignificant as that, but gets seen with something that's out of their time. It fucks with things. Well, it could be very minor things, or it can make everybody believe that Mandela died in 1989. But there was this project that happened here. It was a time travel project called Project Pegasus, and this thing is, I'm not going to go too far down it because it's a wormhole all of itself. It's a whole podcast on itself. But supposedly President Obama was a part of Project Pegasus when he was a child, and he time traveled multiple times, time traveled into the future. He was actually teleported to Mars twice. There's a whole bunch of things about that, but that's, like I said, that's another podcast for another time. But really what happens is when you go back in the future, or you go back like they did in Back to the Future, where his Marty McFly's parents didn't kiss, so therefore they didn't fall in love, and then therefore Marty wasn't born. So it was something as simple as falling out of a tree and saving his father from getting run over by a car could erase him from existence. But in this situation, it's little things, but not everybody is affected the same way, and that's how some of this stuff can come through. It's not fucking witchcraft, lady. It's fucking science.
Right. But they don't believe in science, remember?
No.
Science is crap to them. So, another, probably the most, besides the Nelson Mandela one, probably the most famous one would be, is it the Berenstain or Berenstain Bears?
Okay. Now, this was probably, to them, this is probably the biggest thing that's ever happened to this worthless fucking comic book bullshit little book series ever, because it was one of the worst fucking written, drawn pieces of shit ever. And I fuck you, Cedar Point, for turning that one little playland into the Berenstain Bears, that little land.
How do you really feel about this?
Oh, I don't know. See, so I have a brother, and this feeling that I have near the Berenstain Bears, which it is Stain.
Yes. named after the writers Jan and Stan Berenstain.
Yeah.
But go ahead with your story about your brother.
So I always hated the Family Circus, and I always hated the Berenstain Bears. And my brother, we had this connection. We always hated Family Circus, but he hated Peanuts.
How can you hate Peanuts, man?
Matt hates Peanuts. He just thinks he basically says fuck Charlie Brown. I'm like, you know what? Leave Charlie alone. He's got a lot of issues, and he's probably going to kill the entire gang here in a couple of years when he finally fucking snaps.
Right. He'll start with Lucy.
Oh yeah. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, but I honestly, for me, I could swear it was always Stein, E-I-N, not A-I-N.
Like they were Jewish bears.
Right, but that's how I remembered. I always thought it was the Berenstain Bears.
Yeah.
And no matter, I'm constantly going over and over that.
I think one of the reasons I knew it was Stain is because I felt that it was a stain on children's books.
Okay.
So I'm sorry if I'm really harsh. You guys made a hell of a lot of money out of it. Bravo. I just was not a fan.
All right, let me ask you a question.
The mom bear head.
I don't know. Was it like a
It looked
bonnet
like she was always wearing a shower cap.
or a? Yeah. That's quite the. Yeah. Okay. I got a question for you.
All right.
All right. There was this movie. It had Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, and they were vampires. Do you remember the name of that movie?
Oh, you mean vampires who fall in love in New Orleans, like all the other vampire movies and TV shows?
Right, but do you remember the exact title?
See, if I'm going to say it out loud, I would say Interview with the Vampire.
Did you say Interview with the Vampire?
I did say the.
Okay, you're actually correct on this one. But a lot of people think it's Interview with a Vampire.
Oh. Well, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, it does because he interviewed Brad Pitt throughout the entire thing. It was Brad Pitt's story.
Right.
So, but,
Was that the last known sighting of Christian Slater?
What's that?
I said, was that the last known sighting of Christian Slater?
No, he's an archer.
Oh, that's right. He's also an iRobot.
Yep.
But yeah,
yeah, but I mean, it was. I always thought it was Interview with a Vampire.
Huh.
Another good one. Okay. Oh, what the hell? I don't know the name of the movie, but it had Hannibal Lecter in it. And when he first meets Clarice, what does he say?
Evening, Clarice.
Yes, but how does everybody remember it?
I don't remember.
Most people think it was hello, Clarice, and everybody tries to mimic that and say it. Hello, Clarice.
Oh, they do, don't they?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
I guess that's one I never really noticed.
Yep. Yeah, it is. I mean, that was one of the ones that kind of really popped out at me because I was like, huh, that is weird. And, here's another one, which I just chalk up to stupidity. I don't think it has anything to do with the Mandela Effect, but a lot of people believe there's 52 states.
Now, that one I don't understand.
Well, this is the reasoning I got from it, from what I was reading, was that people think the 50 states plus Hawaii and Alaska.
Right.
So 52.
Okay.
Not knowing that 50 includes Hawaii and Alaska.
Right.
But I chalked that up to stupidity, not the Mandela Effect.
Yeah, that one's just stupid. Now, that was one thing that I did find they're trying to explain, because there's a lot of like one example that I found was news reports and stuff citing stuff that are citing stuff in their articles where people get wrong all the time. Well, one of them was people mistaking how President Kennedy was assassinated in that thing because they put the wrong fucking car in the photo.
Right.
It's not his car that they were there. So people are drawing conclusions based off a car that he wasn't shot in.
Right. Well,
where that was going was poor research is actually kind of one of the bigger parts of this whole phenomenon.
Well, also, there's a lot of people who think that there was 4 people in the car when there was actually 6 people in the car.
6 people in the car?
Yes.
Okay, I remember 4. The driver, right. Then the governor, Jackie, and then JFK. There's
also 2 bodyguards or 2 Secret Servicemen in the car.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people also get the dates mixed around. Some think it's November 22nd. People think it's November 23rd. But, to tie in with that, I'm going to go to the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. because I think both of these ones have a lot in common, because I think they're both what people call pivot points in history. And that means it's an event that caused that it was an event that changed so many things that our timeline settled into what it is now. I think the JFK assassination was one pivot point. I think, that's why people are remembering it differently, because, different timelines, it went differently. Like a lot of people think that Martin Luther King, some remember him being killed with a handgun. Some remember him killed with a grenade or a bomb. Some can't remember the killer's name, or they have a different name for him. that's another one of those Mandela effects, but also a pivot point in history. A point that changed, the events that happened afterwards.
Right. Right. Excuse me. You're going through a lot of those, and I was trying to answer some of those questions in my head while you're doing it. Well, it was it James Earl Ray, and then he used a rifle.
I don't even know, honestly. I can't remember.
But I know he wasn't blown up in a thing, because I remember that there's an iconic photo of right after or right before it happens, or Martin Luther King Jr. is on the balcony of this motor thing with Jesse Jackson like right next to it.
Right.
And this is like one of the last photos of him taken before he was killed.
Right. It was at a hotel, I believe. He was on the balcony.
Yeah, I believe in Memphis.
I think so.
I'm not mistaken.
I think so. But, there's so many things like that, whereas, and it's, there are always these pivot points where it's an event that changed events that happened afterwards, and I think that's where we all start remembering them differently.
Right. Now, are we going as far as say that the government sent chrononauts back in time to make things happen to affect our timeline, so that we argue later in life on whether or not KitKat has a hyphen or not?
Right. Which
that's a fucking conspiracy right there, and that will fucking mess with your head.
Yeah, because it doesn't have one.
Right.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because, when I was going through my research and I found this page, they talk about the science behind all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of it, they talk about wormholes in dark matter, and like Einstein hated the notion and called it the spooky action at a distance, but they talk about how, but one of the things he talked about was how you could build a bridge between these two wormholes, but and by doing so, you could create a loop where you could travel through time.
Like the Einstein-Rosen bridge?
Right, but the problem is these, wormholes or dark matter holes or nebulas, whatever you want to call them, they're unpredictable. So you need to create a bunch of negative energy to keep them open, and they'd have yet to find a source that would create that much negative energy.
So you'd have to use something like dark matter.
Right.
And we all know what dark matter can do. If you've seen Angels and Demons, just a little bit can blow up all the Vatican.
Right. Or, the new series Cloak and Dagger.
Oh. Is there dark matter in that?
Oh, yeah. Cloak is actually, his powers are dark matter.
Oh.
But
that'd be highly volatile.
Right. So let's go into some more famous ones.
All right.
You want to touch on the Star Wars one, because I know you got that in your notes.
Which one are we referring to?
Pick one.
I'm trying to find it real quick. Go ahead. You go ahead and start.
All right. So this line is repeated by people constantly. Everybody's like, they're trying to mimic Darth Vader's voice and go, "Luke, I am your father." But in reality, the line in the movie is, because Luke says, "Hey, you killed my father." The line is actually, "No, I am your father."
Yes.
But the funny thing is, even James Earl Jones remembers it as, "Luke, I am your father." And he did the voice.
Right. James Earl Jones was like mute until he was 8.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he wasn't mute. He just didn't talk because he had a stutter, a really bad one. He was so self-conscious and embarrassed about it that he didn't speak because he was embarrassed to talk.
That makes sense.
Okay. The other Star Wars one that I have. What colors are C-3PO's legs?
Well, one of them is actually silver. The other one is the gold or copper.
Is it silver?
It is, but nobody remembers it that way.
Yeah. And it's funny because not even the toys gave him the silver leg. It's just from the knee down.
Right.
But, but he was supposedly because he was made, he
right.
was not this Anakin built him with some scrap parts things, but
right. Well, and the odd thing is he had that silver leg all the way up until Force Awakens, and he was all gold or copper or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, you froze up on me there for a second, so I don't know what happened.
Yeah, you froze on me too.
All right, so he had that leg all the way up until Force Awakens. Force Awakens, they changed it to be so he's all gold, all copper, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, even the actor, when asked about it, the guy who played C-3PO couldn't remember.
Right. So those are the two Star Wars ones I had. I'm not very organized today. Trying to hear.
That's all right. So what's your next one?
So my next one is one that I want to go back, keep it kind of light, keep it kind of in the realm of animals, like because I want to lighten the load from the rant about the Berenstains. Little Curious George.
Yes. Oh, George.
Everybody knows Curious George. He would swing through the trees with a tail.
My wife says so.
And a lot of other people do too. But no, Curious George did not have a tail.
Right.
He swung with his arms.
Yep. And because he was a chimp, and chimps didn't have tails.
Right.
But everybody remembers him having a tail.
Yes. Everybody did.
I found that interesting.
Silly little bastard.
Got another question for you.
Okay.
What is the first line in the theme song from Mr. Rogers?
I'm going to say It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
I'm sorry, but we have some lovely parting gifts for you. It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood.
Oh.
But I would have said the same thing you did had I not done this research.
Right.
Because that's the way I remember it. I remember it as, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day to be a neighbor, won't you be mine? But it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood. That's just odd to me.
Now, we both lived in Pittsburgh. What part of that did he find beautiful?
I have no idea, because that place made Detroit look clean.
Yeah, it was funny because when you drive into Pittsburgh, there's this huge mural of all the greats that either that came from the town and worked and played there. So here you got who was it? There was Franco Harris and Jack Lambert here, two Pittsburgh Steelers football players, and right in the middle of them, Fred Rogers.
Right.
This one the best. At least it cracked me up all the time.
Right. All right. Your turn.
So one of the games that I think is probably the most overrated in all of history, poor Parker Brothers came out with a little game called Monopoly.
Right.
Everybody remembers Rich Uncle Pennybags as the man running around like a get out of jail free, and he's on the box. Does he have a monocle or not?
I always thought he did.
I did too. I swear up and down that the man had a monocle, because I don't know if it was the TV shows we watched back in the day where there was a lot of characters that had monocles, which I never understood the point of a monocle, but I swear that he had a monocle on the game.
And I swear, even like when McDonald's had the Monopoly game, that they had him with a monocle.
Yeah.
That's how I remember it.
Yeah.
Apparently he never had one, which is just odd. All right. So I'm going to go back to movies. In Forrest Gump, he sits down on a park bench next to a lady. He opens up, a box of candy, offers the lady one. She turns him down. He looks over at her and says, and this is how I remember it. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. But it was actually, life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
I swear it is.
I did too. It makes more sense.
Yeah.
Life was like a box of chocolates. It doesn't make sense at all.
Because he's not going to die the next day.
Right.
Jenny's going to, but he's not going
to. If he was a ghost, I could see it going, yeah, life was like a box of chocolates.
It's now the Sixth Sense.
Right.
The whole time. And she could talk to dead people.
Right.
She could talk to dead mentally handicapped people on the park bench in Alabama.
Right. Exactly. She's a medium.
AIDS.
All right, your turn.
Okay. So around the same time that Mandela supposedly died, that most people thought that he did in 1989, there was this huge student protest uprising in China.
Mm-hmm.
Most people, if you remember, it was the Tiananmen Square protests where thousands of students and people protested over the government. Well, probably one of the most iconic photos in all of history. And I want you to look this up too, because this is awesome. One man with 2 grocery bags walks out into the street and stops a whole line of tanks and refuses to move. The tank starts moving to the side, he steps in front of it. It moves the other way, he steps in front of it. Well, a lot of people, in being China, this does make sense, that people have a vivid memory of the man being run over. Which, to fulfill the narrative, nobody knows who this man is. He's never been identified ever since this photo was taken, or this video was taken. So it would make sense that he was actually just run over, and then the street sweepers came and got him later.
Right.
But that's not what happened. The tank stayed, and then that was it. He actually stopped him. Now, the thing that I want you to look up is so fucking badass that, sure, this guy stood out in front of those tanks, but there's a couple of photos that happened before this where you clearly see the man walking down the sidewalk, and you see the tanks in the distance. So this, one of the bravest humans to ever walk the earth, looked down the road about a quarter mile, seeing a whole line of fucking tanks, and you know what? I'm going to stop them. And he did.
Right. What the hell is he carrying in his hands?
He's got like a lunch pail in one hand and like a grocery bag in the other.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So armed with the lunchbox and a grocery bag, he stops a whole line of tanks. It's not just one tank. You can see at least 4 just in this picture alone.
Yeah, if you can see the extended video, it goes way back. And there's a photo of him before that you see all them tanks rolling down the street, and he had the balls to walk out in front of them all and stop this tank.
Right. He's just called Tank Man.
Yeah.
So what's the Mandela effect that happened with that?
Okay, so most people vividly remember this man being run over on live TV.
Okay.
But that's not what happened.
Right. He stopped the tanks. Okay.
It does fit the narrative because the man was never identified after this.
Right. He kind of disappeared off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is crazy. That is really crazy. You should put that link into the notes. All right. So here's one for all you conspiracy nuts out there. So remember, 9/11, the Pentagon. How many people were killed in the Pentagon crash?
Well, I think the number that most people believe was 827.
In the Pentagon?
Yeah.
I swear to God, nobody was killed because that area of the Pentagon was closed down for construction.
Well, you see, that's what makes sense. But I've heard numbers is up to like 800 people died there.
I've heard 125 people. You know, that's what they're saying. That's what I saw in the research I was doing. But for me, I clearly remember nobody died because that area of the Pentagon was closed down for construction.
It was completely closed down for construction.
And then coming up with this stuff, it baffles me now because I look back, I'm like going, no, it was closed. What the fuck? What's wrong with you people? So, all right, where are we going from there?
Okay, so I just looked it up. That this thing says officially that there was 800 or 184 identification accounts for 125 people killed inside the Pentagon and 54 from the plane, including the hijackers. But that it doesn't make it that.
No, it was closed. I swear. I mean, everything that everybody believes in, that place was closed.
Yes, it was. That area was under renovations, and we need to do 9/11 one of these days because there's
so many things.
Yes.
So that's probably going to be like a 5-part podcast.
Probably.
You know, so let's say that one for down the road.
All right. So I'll save those little tidbits for later.
Right. So your next one.
All right. Yeah, I know, sorry. Okay. How many Oscars does Leonardo DiCaprio have?
1?
Yes. He won it in February 2016. He was nominated a couple of times, but a lot of people clearly remember him winning multiple times before that.
Huh. What did he win it for? Was it? It was The Revenant? Okay. See, I would have guessed Titanic.
Yeah, you see, would have thought they would have won back then. Then there was like Gatsby was nominated, and then he was in Gangs of New York, which he was nominated. I think he was, but he was in all.
I think Daniel Day-Lewis was actually nominated for that one.
I thought Leonardo was supporting on that one.
It could be. But yeah, that's weird. I mean, that's honestly one I just never cared about because I couldn't stand him as an actor.
Oh, right on.
All right, I'm going to take us way back, way back.
Okay.
To Bond, James Bond, and the Moonraker. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
Okay, you remember the bad guy?
Jaws.
Got those metal teeth.
Yeah.
So, do you remember the scene where they're fighting on the train, and then James escapes, the train wrecks, it derails and stuff?
Right.
And this girl with an incredible wreck. I'm sorry, I know that's sexist and stuff, but man, every time I see this chick's pictures, I'm like going, blah, 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 blah. Some reason I'm getting pictures of motorboats and stuff. But, yes, I know that was horrible of me. But anyways, she helps him get up. And he looks at her, and he smiles, and she looks up at him and smiles, and people swear to God she had braces.
Oh.
It would fit the narrative of the story of why he smiled back at her, or she smiled at him, he smiled back at her. But she never had braces.
Huh.
But a couple months after the movie came out, there was a credit card commercial with him in it, and he smiles at the girl who's ringing him up. She grabs his credit card, smiles back at him, and she has braces.
Oh, so everybody confused that girl with the movie.
Or in the movie, she actually had braces, and it's what they based the whole commercial off from.
That's true too.
So, I don't remember per se. I've seen the movie, but I think I was a kid when I saw that. I mean, it was the 80s.
Right. Okay, so if you want to go way back, let's go way back.
All right.
All right. So, one of my favorite pastimes to talk about are old Disney classics.
Right.
And there's a little one called Snow White with her 7 little dudes.
Yep.
Or 7 little people. I'm not going to call them dwarves. So, there's a line in this that the evil stepmother goes to this.
It's the most famous line of the movie.
Yes. Everybody knows this line. But what is the line?
Mm-hmm. You want me to say what everybody thinks or what the actual line is?
Say what everybody thinks, because that's what I think just about everybody's going to believe is the real one.
Right. Because what everybody thinks, including myself until I looked this up, was, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?
And that is what everybody, including myself, and it has repeated thousands of times throughout the course of their lives, but it is not. It is magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all?
No, it's who's the fairest one of all.
One of all. Yes.
Yeah, I found that one fascinating too, because that was a big head scratcher for me, because I'm like, huh?
Yeah, I actually found a YouTube clip of it.
Yep, I did too.
To watch it and go, holy shit. I've been saying that's fucking wrong this whole time, but I haven't been saying it wrong, and neither of you, because the fucking government sent back chrononauts to kill women, and then that changed what that line was.
Right.
That was another time-altering event.
Right. So here's one for you, since we talked about religious zealots and stuff. Well, let's go to the Bible. You know, in Isaiah, they talk about a certain beast laying down with the lamb. What beast was laying down with the lamb?
Should I say what everybody thought it was?
Yeah, say what everybody thought it was. That's how we'll play this game.
Okay. So everybody thought it says wolf with lamb.
No, everybody thought it said lion.
All right, right. You're right. Reverse. Everybody thought it said lion, but it actually is the wolf.
Right. But I mean, that's where the whole term lion and lamb came from.
Yeah.
You know?
Based on
right. That's what we believe.
Right. Exactly. And there's a YouTube clip on it, and I can't believe I fucked that up. There's a YouTube clip on it where it talks about these guys went to different priests and asked them about that specific passage. But before they could look at the Bible, they asked them to recite the passage. And just about every one of them got it wrong.
Right. It's amazing, isn't it?
It's funny because when you start thinking about all this, and it's like, how on earth can so many people be wrong about one thing? I mean, granted, it's not like we're talking about, you fucked up the cure for cancer or something, but how is it that everybody collectively at the same time can believe this one thing? Is it one person says it like that and it just sounds right, so you go with it? Or is it just one of those things where the government sent back a chrononaut to kill somebody and then that changed the timeline?
Right. You're stuck on this chrononaut thing, man. All right, what's your next one? I still have several pages left, so.
You got what?
I still have several pages left. So.
Right on. So, in the 90s, there were a few comedians as big or bigger than Sinbad.
Yeah.
Sinbad was notorious for being a clean comic. He was in a bunch of movies. He had some TV shows, but one of the things that he's best known for, he wasn't in.
Right.
There was a movie called it was a 90s movie called Shazam, where he plays a genie. Even he finally jumped on the bandwagon and started talking about it, about, I was never made a genie movie. But
right.
There was a genie movie with Shaquille O'Neal.
Right.
Kazam.
Right.
But I'd be hard pressed to find somebody that would confuse the look of Sinbad and the look of Shaquille O'Neal,
Right.
dressed as a genie.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, not just a size difference. They don't look anything alike.
No, nothing.
You know, and it's interesting because Sinbad actually offered a reward for anybody that can find clips of the movie.
Oh, there you go.
Because he's like, I never did this fucking movie, man. Yeah, that's okay. Here's one. We're going to movies. Let's go to The Matrix.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember the scene where Neo is sitting in a chair, Morpheus walks in, sits down in a chair, and talks to Neo? And do you remember him saying, "What if I told you
everything you know is a lie"?
Right. Do you remember him saying that?
Yes, I do. I remember him saying that right before he offers him the red pill and the blue pill.
Right.
But he didn't say it.
Yeah, he never said it. I swear to God, because I mean, all these memes are based off that. Everything. Everybody remembers it this way because otherwise you wouldn't have all these fucking memes.
Right. Exactly.
Because I mean, that's how he explained the whole Matrix thing to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
That just summed it up.
And you take that out of the movie, and all of a sudden, it starts making less sense.
There's a lot of I went back and watched all three of them. Okay. I watched 2.5 of them a couple months ago. I cannot watch after Neo gets blinded in the third one. Spoiler alert. I can't go past that. It just, after that, it gets this whole religious theme, and then it's like, really? This is what, and you don't solve anything. You're just going to live in harmony with the machines now? What the fuck is that all about? But
right.
There's so many parts. There's that movie. It's still cool. It's still, the first Matrix movie is still a cool movie to watch, and it's a neat story and everything. But there's parts of it that get.
Let's be real though. Everybody watches the Matrix for the action scenes,
right?
And the contortions.
Yes, and then you watch the second one for the chase scene, which is like 15 minutes long. And Monica Bellucci, who happens to be the Merovingian's wife that gives them the Keymaster.
Right.
After that, there's no reason to watch it.
Right. All right, you're the next one.
All right. So mine is kind of a different, this next one is kind of a different one. So tell me when you start remembering any of this. At a boy was born of a virgin. He raised up called Son of Man, or Son of God.
Yeah.
Died for our sins on a cross. They wrote a book about him. But is there any historical records written other than the Bible about this man?
No.
There's 3 that are close. 2 of them have been proven to be fallacy, and the third one actually talks about somebody named Christus, not Christ, but every other huge historical figure has had records written about them, like not like a Bible, not like letters and words written by him to somebody else. There's something documented about this person. So I'm going to throw the story of Jesus as a Mandela effect, because everybody seems, a good chunk of our fucking planet believes that this man existed.
Right. Well, you know what? Even I have Native American friends, and it's part of their lore as well, of a man walking across the water, across the ocean to come and preach to them peace.
Yeah. There's so many others. It's just a retelling of the same story. Right. It's the same story as Horus, which was written 2,000 years beforehand. So,
well, actually, if you want, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but go check out the documentary Zeitgeist.
Yes, the beginning of that.
Yeah, it talks about how every religion is based off a religion before it. It's just all cycles.
Yes.
So all right. So let's go to 1932, March of 1932. Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr. Okay, we all know who Charles Lindbergh is, right?
Yes.
So he has a baby.
True.
He has a baby, and the baby was kidnapped.
Oh,
so
right.
A little while later, he was taken from his home in New Jersey, and then I don't remember how long it was, but they found him murdered, and they never caught the killer.
Right.
Or no, they did catch the killer.
Yeah, the Rosencrantzes.
Right. But he never admitted to doing it. But thousands of people swear that the baby was never found and the kidnapper was never caught. Granted, in 1932, they didn't have things like dental records. They didn't have, the CSIs and shit like that.
Right. But to this day, there's a lot of people that believe that Lindbergh did it himself, or he was at least involved.
Right.
But
that could be another pivot point.
Yeah. Goddamn chrononauts are everywhere.
Right.
So we've talked a lot about movies and different historical events, but the Mandela Effect happens with geography too.
Oh yeah.
So one of the biggest ones that occurs with this is an island landmass of Sri Lanka. Now, everybody will agree that Sri Lanka is somewhere in the Indian Ocean. Anybody who's ever watched any footage of the Boxing Day tsunami that hit through there devastated this whole region.
Oh yeah.
But its actual whereabouts is not where people believe it is.
Where do people believe it is?
They believe it's a big ass island right on the southern tip of India.
Okay.
But it's actually farther south and way farther east, out farther into the ocean than like Madagascar is to the southern tip of Africa.
Right.
They think it's an island right there, but it's not. It's actually quite a distance.
Isn't it like, wouldn't you say it's closer to like Australia and New Zealand than it is to India?
Over closer to Indonesia.
Okay. So yeah, that's interesting. And wasn't there more with the maps? Like, didn't I believe somebody said South America looks different, and Australia and New Zealand look different.
Yeah, I didn't get that. I didn't get those ones.
I didn't go into a lot of detail on those ones just because I'm just like, it's a map. It's drawn.
And most people, and like you've already talked about, most people seem to think that we have more states than we do.
Right. Right.
So we're obviously not the best at geography.
Right. I suck at geography. I'll be the first to admit it. Hey, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Is it the Flintstones or is it the Flintstones?
Oh. See, it makes sense to be Flintstones because they're the modern Stone Age family.
Right.
But the way you say that makes me second guess that.
Is actually the Flintstones.
See? Okay.
So, but it was the Flintstones, but they actually have changed it with it. They modernized it and it changed it to the Flintstones. But it was, when we were kids, it was Flinstones.
Oh, wow.
That didn't have that extra T. Didn't make it Flint. We always, when we say it, though, we've always said Flintstones.
Yeah. Because they actually kind of seems more, it seems more logical.
Right. Right. But that's just one of those weird anomalies that we don't understand it.
Right.
All right. What next?
But to go on that, there's this. I'm trying to change this up so we're not just throwing out examples of this and not trying to explain it. So one thing that I would kind of explain, like this one, that one there, it made me think of, because it's the modern Stone Age family. He works in a rock quarry. They live in rock houses. You know, their tires are all rocks. So Flint makes sense to there. Now, like as you pointed out, they did eventually change it, but changing it was almost like an event of Occam's razor, which is where it's a law that states that when all things are equal, the simplest one is the correct one. So
Right.
here they actually went a roundabout way of actually making it in to fit Occam's razor, because it makes more sense to be Flint as in Flint instead of Flynn. But at the time, Flintstones, it may have been an homage to like Errol Flynn, who was, you know, a huge action celebrity from the day, you know, which was the Stone Age of cinema, that maybe that was named, you know, after him. I'm just speculating. And
I think this one is. I think there's a conspiracy on this one because I watched, you know, did research on it. Now all my research is turning up opposite. I have just experienced my own Mandela effect. Because like Wikipedia, it's the Flint Stones.
Okay. See, I think the goddamn chrononauts are listening to us and they went back and changed something. So who died?
Right. Who are they fucking with now? I'm sorry. I'm actually weirding out right now because I believe experiencing my own Mandela effect right now. And
That's
it's
awesome.
You have urged.
This is awesome.
Oh, okay. All right, you go on the next one. I gotta get my brain back together.
Okay, here's a simple one, but it's one that a lot of people mistake for some reason, and I don't understand, because if you've been there or you've seen a picture, you've seen a map, you know the truth. But so many people think when they go to Disney World, you walk through the Magic Kingdom, or you walk through the castle to get into the Magic Kingdom.
Okay.
But in fact, when you come into both Disneyland and Disney World, you hit Main Street first. And then the castle is the centerpiece of the thing. You can still walk through it, but that's not how you enter the park.
Huh. Well, yeah, I don't remember. I mean, I haven't been to Disney since I was like 13 years old. And that was a long fucking time ago.
Yeah. So the both what's the one? Not Ariel's castle. The hell's her name? Why am I drawing a blank now? Our fans are going to tweet in and attack me over this one for forgetting Aurora's castle, and then I don't remember what the other one is. But they're the centerpiece in the first part of the park, because that's where they do all the fireworks above it, so that they're far enough back to where you can have people on all sides of it to see.
Cinderella?
Maybe it is Cinderella's castle.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm just throwing out Disney princess names. It could be Jasmine. It could be.
Right. I do know the one is Aurora's castle. I think that's Disneyland.
All right. So I'm going to sum this up, and we're going to take a short break before we start with the second part of this, because we've been doing this for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So we have been talking about the Mandela Effect. We talked about pivot points in history. We talked about some of the reasoning behind what people believe happens. We've given a bunch of examples. And, I mean, I still have a bunch of examples that we can talk about in the next part of this, and I'm sure you do as well.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do our disclaimer, but basically our disclaimer is if you don't like us, fuck you, we don't care.
Yeah. Right.
But so we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll come back next week with the second part of the Mandela Effect.
All right. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for part 2 next week. Catchphrase here. All right.
Yes. All right.